it's not just the food, it's the act of eating the food, and you aren't just eating the physical substance, you're eating the emotional substance, and it's not just the physical thing, right? It's the whole everything around it.
Hey everyone, it's Dani Valent here with you for Dirty Linen, my food, hospitality, and all things eating podcast. I love chatting to you and bringing you guests who are doing interesting things all around the world. We are traveling today to chat to Dan Kittredge. I believe we're finding him in Europe today, but he grew up on an organic farm in the US, and he's now going way beyond organics, developing theories and practices around nutrient-dense food. He's traveling around the world teaching and will bring his certificate level masterclass back to Australia in April. Dan, welcome to Dirty Linen.
Thanks for having me.
What is nutrient-dense food?
What is nutrient density? Yeah. We created the word nutrient density, I think in 2008, to open up the conversation around the fact that there's a variation in nutrient levels in food. So if you've ever picked a tomato off the vine in the middle of the summer and taken a bite out of it, and then you've taken a tomato off the grocery store shelf in the middle of the winter, maybe you know the difference in tomatoes from as an animal, like with your tongue, or maybe you've had a peach ripe off of a tree and a peach off a grocery store shelf. So there's dramatic nutrient variation in food. Like not all milk is uniform, not all rice is uniform, not all beef is uniform, and there's no word to discuss that. So we created the word nutrient density to discuss that, and it's a continuum basically, like 1 to 100. This is more or less nutrient dense, not you are or are not nutrient dense. So
I love the way that, you bring it directly to the human, animal and the senses, because when I started reading around your theories and the masterclass that you're traveling around the world delivering, it all sounded pretty scientific and perhaps not connected to enjoyment. But tell me how it does relate to us as humans who love to eat for more reasons than just, packing nutrients in.
Our overall well-being, our spiritual coherence, our vigor, vitality, health, immune system function, the health of our children. Basically, you are what you eat. And if what you're building your body out of is junk, then you should expect to be incoherent and degenerate and denatured. And we're, in most of us, like that have been eating out of what we now call the conventional ag, which is a perversion of ag, of course. 3 generations of nutritionally deficient food is causing us to fall apart. So we're literally physiologically, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, degrading because we're building ourselves out of insufficient substance. It's central to our overall well-being. And not only that, also we can reverse climate change and, heal the environment if we practice agriculture well. There's a direct connection between how you raise food and the health of the environment that comes from that process and the health of yourself and your children. So it's like, I don't know, critically visceral in all kinds of ways. And it can be explained and understood through a scientific lens as well, which makes us sound legitimate and scientific, even though we're secretly very much more spiritually oriented.
Well, you've hit on some extraordinarily personal things, like things about people in their lives, thinking about the health of their children and their own well-being, spiritual and otherwise. And you've also obviously considering, major planetary concerns such as climate change. I mean, the questions don't get much bigger or more compelling. I'd love to learn a bit more about you, Dan, and how you come to be doing this, thinking like this, making all these connections.
I grew up on an organic farm. My parents ended up professionally running an organic farming organization, being sort of leaders in the movement in the U.S. starting in the 1980s. And so yeah, I spent my 20s traveling the world being an activist, and I spent a bunch of time up in the Himalayas, following the spiritual quest. And then I got married and tried to start a family and wanted to be a farmer for a living. And I thought that was a nice homesteading, was a great way to raise a family. And I realized that, like a lot of farmers, I wasn't good enough to make a living because my plants were sick. Pest and disease pressure is a sign of poor health. And being eaten alive by a flesh-eating fungus in an animal is a sign of poor health. Like, it is also a sign of poor health in a plant. Being eaten alive by larvae is a sign of poor health in an animal. It's a sign of poor health in a plant. And that's what a lot of farmers struggle with, is unhealthy plants, which is why our cost of production is high, which is why we have a hard time making a living. So if you actually end up figuring out how to work well with nature, then nature's been growing plants for 400 million years. Indigenous cultures globally were able to work well with nature to create a dynamic where everything was flourishing with no plow and no, wheel and no beast of burden, by being more sensitive and in touch. And so, yeah, the process of trying to basically provide for a family and live an honest, good life forced me to learn how to be in harmony with nature. And when I started dialing that all in, I said, oh my God, there's something really exciting here. You can make a living farming, working part-time, and you can have all these amazingly positive symbiotic benefits. So I started talking about it, and that turned into courses, and it turned into an NGO, and it turned into it's now a thing. There's a lot more. It's a process, like.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there's a lot. Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot more, and of course there is a course, a masterclass. So I guess I'm not going to become qualified in this conversation. But what kinds of things will people learn when they do your course?
I have historically called it principles of biological systems. So it's basically, how did nature evolve things to work? And, like I said, plants have been growing for hundreds of millions of years, and indigenous cultures knew how to do it well. And in most cases, a lot of the things we do are counterproductive. We are violating nature in lots of ways through farming practices, and that's, it has negative impacts. And so when you understand, for starters, how nature evolved things to work, then you can understand which are your limiting factors you can address systemically. And the more well you do that, the more well systems function. So it's a process. I can go into great detail if you want. I'm not sure who our audience is and how much they want to know.
Well, who is your audience?
For this series specifically, it's people who want to, who are willing to be humble enough to acknowledge that they have a lot to learn, and have a desire to accomplish excellence in plant health and nutritional caliber of food. There's a really simple thing called a refractometer, which has been around since, I think, the 1830s, and it costs $20 to buy one. And there's a thing called a Brix scale. It's like the Richter scale or the Celsius scale. It's just a scale, and there's a poor, average, good, excellent in the Brix scale for food quality, for Brix levels in food. And if you go to the farmer's market, if you check out your CSA bag, if you go to any grocery store, it's almost entirely impossible to find excellent anywhere ever. Average is very normal. Good happens occasionally. Excellent almost never does. All of us that are organic and permaculturalists and regenerative and biodynamic and local and agroecologists and everything else, all the names and labels and religions and isms and dogmas that we've got out there aren't actually accomplishing excellence. And so this course is for people who seriously want to accomplish that. And it's, the way I'm organizing it is basically, it's a 4-day course, 2 days in the fall, 2 days in the spring, but it's a process that goes on for multiple years. And so We have a critical mass minimum attendance level of 50. And so we want to basically create a cohort of people in a bioregion that are excited about this process of learning. And we all share our experiences and document them and collectively, give each other feedback. And it's an iterative, evolving, collaborative framework. And so the idea is, you only get the certificate when you've gotten to the point of being able to produce excellent caliber bricks in 5 different crops, which may take 2 or 3 years. And you have to share publicly how you got there. So you have to not only get to that level of excellence before you get the certificate, but you also have to share for the rest of the world how you got there. So if we get 50 people in, Victoria who are doing that and they accomplish it, then we'll have a collective level of wisdom and understanding of individuals, but also knowledge that can be freely available to everybody else there to pick this up. And hopefully we have a new bar of understanding for the region for people who want to do a good job, because right now none of us are doing it. And let's, those of us who are excited about learning and growing, do it together and openly and collaboratively, not just for ourselves, but for everyone. So that's the idea, and it's a new thing. I've been teaching this course for 17 years, but it's always been like, I do, 1 day in the fall, 1 day in the spring, or 2 days in the fall, 2 days in the spring, and everybody has a great time. They feel inspired. They go home, and that's it. And so we're trying to take it to the next level of really, don't just do a course, don't just do a workshop, but actually, hold each other's hands and see if we can raise the bar together. So I'm very excited.
Can you tell me how you took something that you've grown from good to excellent?
Yeah, well, so I think the first thing you need to understand is that it's the microbes that evolved plants, and they're the bottom of the food chain, and 95% of the cells in the plant are not plant cells, they're bacterial cells and things. So it's really about creating a dynamic where the microbiome functions well. It's not about really whether it's a carrot or a beet or a tomato or a apple or a wheat or anything. It doesn't really matter too much what kind of plant it is. It matters that the microbiome is flourishing. And so for that to happen, the microbes, they need air to breathe. So if your soil's too tight, they die of asphyxiation. They need water to drink. So if it's too dry, they die of thirst. If they need food to eat, so if there's no soil cover and sufficient, photosynthesis coming down through the leaves, they die of hunger. They need basic minerals to build their bodies out of. So if there's no cobalt or boron or, molybdenum, they can't exist, and so they can't exist. They themselves must be there. The full spectrum of microbes must be there. So if you've got a dynamic where, through historical dynamics, a lot of those species have been knocked out, then this doesn't work. So, foundationally, air, water, food, basic minerals, and life itself, they're so rudimentary, right? They're such basic things, and yet, in many cases, addressing those imbalances doesn't make any money for people selling us stuff because it's so natural, and so we're never taught about it. And we're actually inspired to engage in things like buying fertilizer and doing tillage and blah, 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 that are actually counterproductive, because people can sell us things, and so therefore we're taught about it, and so therefore we think we're supposed to do it. It's really just creating a dynamic where life is able to function, give her what she needs, and then you can go take a nap, play with your kids, and it really happens fast. It's so simple, but it's like, I don't know. I have great fun teaching the course because it's like a bunch of ahas for people. Like, duh. Like, why didn't I think about that? Like, oh my God, that's obvious. And like, yeah, I know it's obvious. No one's saying it, but like.
It sounds like a lot of unlearning as well as learning.
Basically, the biggest issues between the years, right? That's what the biggest issue is. We think, yeah, exactly, yeah.
But let's go back to something that you've grown. Let's just really, I guess, make it concrete for people. Tell us about a fruit or a vegetable or a grain, something that, you didn't realize could be so delicious until you went through this process.
Or so healthy. Like when I grew up on the farm, we would rotate our potato plants like good organic farmers every year across the street, whatever it was, rotate them everywhere. And you put them in the ground and they're out of the ground by 1.5 inches. And all the potato bugs in the property, I've found them, and they're mating and they're laying eggs, and they're in short order. If the plants are just down to just, little, all the leaves have been eaten and there's just like little stems left. Like that was just normal, was like potato bugs eating the potato plants. Or cucumbers. Like we always had this thing called powdery mildew, and we would just do successions of cucumbers every 4 weeks because we had a CSA and we wanted to have cucumbers for the CSA. And, a few weeks after the cucumbers start fruiting, the leaves turn yellow, then they turn brown, they turn white, and they die because they're being eaten alive by a flesh-eating fungus. And so when I started growing, I think early on in this process, I had the cucumbers I'd planted in the spring were still going strong in the fall. And I'm like, wait a minute, I never replanted these cucumbers. It's 4 months later and they're still fruiting. Holy crap. Or like the potatoes got killed by frost and not by potato beetles. I was like, what? So, the level of vigor and vitality that we're used to, I don't know, tomato plants that just fruit and fruit and fruit and fruit and fruit and just go and go. And the bar is so low. What's exciting is like the bar is really low about like the level of vigor and vitality in the plants we grow. And
But so what have you done? Is it worm juice? Is it, I don't know, what is it? Like, I just don't quite get the levers, because air and sunshine and
So rock dust and sea salt, like depending on what minerals are deficient in your soil, like we'll use, have you heard of B12? You must have heard of vitamin B12, right? Yeah.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a thing. And like people, if they're vegans or vegetarians, are told like, if you don't have enough B12 in your body, you need to take a supplement. You'll become, weak or lethargic. And if you really don't have enough B12, you become dead. And like, we need B12. It's a thing. And inside the compound of B12, right at the middle, is this element called cobalt. There's one atom of cobalt in the center of B12. And basically, if you don't have enough cobalt in your body, you can't have B12, and you don't have B12, you can't be alive. So you need cobalt to live. That's just a thing. And 80% of the species of soil life are also B12 dependent. So if you don't have cobalt in your soil life can't live. And the conventional agricultural paradigm, if you send a soil test off to the government lab, the university or whoever, they're going to look at 5 nutrients max, make recommendations for nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus, maybe calcium, maybe sulfur, because the whole model of conventional agriculture is that plants eat through soluble nutrients. Like a soluble nutrient, it dissolves in the water and the plant sucks it up. I use the model of an IV drip. Like you can be kept alive with soluble nutrients being injected directly into your bloodstream, but that doesn't do good things for your microbiome. Your gut flora dies if you don't have any roughage coming through. And when your gut flora dies, your immune system is crap. And when your immune system is crap, you're in rough shape. So if you feed plants through soluble nutrients enough to cause them to stay alive, but you don't support their microbiome, then they become weak. And so only when you understand that the plants have evolved to function through a well-functioning microbiome do you begin to create the dynamics where the microbiome is functioning well so the plants can flourish. And so, I don't know. A soil cover, imagine that there's people living in your soil and they need to eat, and they eat through the plants making sugar in the leaves that then is injected down through the roots into the soil to feed them. And if you're a farmer and you have a bare, a fallow, like there's a part of the year when it's between this crop and that crop, the soil's bare. Well, how do all the people living in the soil eat? Like, let's just say you got 2 months or 3 months of bare soil. If there's 4 billion people in every teaspoon of soil and there's no food for them to eat for 3 months, they all starve to death. And that soil becomes dirt. And then you put plants in and there's nobody living there to feed the plants. So you got to keep them fed. You got to understand that all 12 months of the year, the people who are at the bottom of the food chain need to be fed. And so you must keep the soil covered. You must keep the soil green. You must keep it alive. A lot of the stuff is really, really simple, but we don't actually think about the full implications of it. Same with water. Like, if you were to water a chicken 10 months of the year, but not 2 months of the year, or a cow, it would be a dead chicken, right? Like, if your soil does not have moisture, if you aren't managing it in such a fashion as for it to maintain moisture or air, right? Like there's this thing called a plow pan where if you disturb the soil like down 3 inches or 6 inches, there'll be this really tight zone. Oftentimes, below that area, if air can't get down, like put a Ziploc bag over a chicken's head, zip tie a bag over a chicken's head for 5 minutes. It's going to be dead. So if your soil's tight, the microbes die. And so we don't manage our soils in such a fashion as to think about what life needs to function. Because we're not thinking it's about the microbes. We're thinking it's about the plants. And all they do is put them in the ground and give them fertilizer and they're going to grow. Yeah, you can jack somebody up on, steroids, right? Like shoot them up on steroids and they're going to get big muscles, but they're not going to be well. So it's just a lot of unconscious things we do that we've been taught that don't make sense and that are good for people selling us stuff, that are bad for plant health, that are bad for soil health. I don't know. It's all kind of. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I'm feeling good about the free mulch that I got from the council depot and just put all over my soil. And I love the vision of the 4 million people in my dirt, like that resonates. So I feel like I'm starting to understand the beautiful complexity of the simplicity that you're preaching. I'm sure you've heard every kind of naysayer and, also bot with, when you have these conversations. And I reckon one of them must be, but, things aren't like they have been for thousands of years. There's all these people to feed and people in cities, and we need those supply chains. We need reliability of crops, and we are going to jack up the soil because that's the only way to get the food on the trucks. I mean, can your theories feed the world?
Categorically. It's way more productive. It's the much lower cost of production. It's dramatically better climate resilience to have a functioning living soil than to have a dead, inert media you're injecting with synthetic chemistry. You get way more productivity in living systems than you do in chemistry systems. In polycultures, right? I mean, chemical monocultures is the model of industry. Like that's extremely inefficient. There's nowhere near the capacity to produce calories of, intense caliber per acre that in a chemical monoculture than there is in a nuanced polyculture. Like if you wanted to maximize food production on an acre, it is not efficient to do a chemical monoculture. It's efficient to do a savanna ecosystem polyculture, which is what indigenous cultures were doing globally, which is why when the white man came and, messed things up, there was massive amounts of animals and fish and food and fruit. And you read the original historical literature of when white man first came to Australia or first came to North America, the level of vitality and fecundity in the ecosystem was massive. the amount of animals, the amount of food, there was just a completely vibrant ecosystem. In Australia, it was like 8 to 10% organic matter across the entire country. They couldn't ride their horses because the soil was so spongy, right? There's these massive marshes and tons of birds and all kinds of, there was just so much life growing everywhere by these quote unquote primitive people. Like, talk about hubris and arrogance and judgment. No wheel, no plow, no beast of burden, no fertilizer, no tractor, no PhDs. But they were, managing the land to accomplish massive amounts of vitality. They weren't hunter-gatherers. They were brilliant polyculture, permaculture people, right? And so, yes, absolutely, we can produce well. Yes.
So, Dan, I think let's set aside the question of whether we can turn the economic machine around, because I don't know, maybe chaos will end up doing that for us or those who come after us.
I'm proposing to use the economic system to accomplish our objectives, to work with money to get to where we want to get to. But sorry, I interrupted.
No, well, let's come to that then. That's even better. But let's just talk about the soil side of it. Like, is it possible? Is it feasible? Does it take a long time to turn a barren, chemical jacked up field into somewhere that's so delicious and spongy you can't ride a horse across it?
I don't know. Less than 5 years. Depends on the dynamics. Effectively, it would depend on how much effort and attention you're willing to put into it. The biggest block, they say, is between the ears, right? It's, in most cases, not so much an issue of can it be done? It's an issue of, are you able to do it? And are you willing to do it? I was just down there in Australia in December, and it looks like there's significant parts of the country that get a decent amount of rain. Like 500, 750,000, 1,500 mils in a lot of parts of the country, and they're still desertified because the soil is dirt, it's tight and hard, and when it rains, it runs off. Like, in any area where you get anything resembling a decent amount of water, no problem. No problem. I don't know about totally chemical land, but the land when I bought my farm, it was really tight, and it was not doing well. I'm pretty sure there had not been a ton of chemicals applied, but it just was totally worn out. And it took me 2 months to go from tight, hard, light-colored dirt to chocolate cake soil growing healthy plants.
Wow, that's inspiring.
A bacteria splitting, they split, and then they split again, and they split again. If they have all the air, the water, the food, the minerals that they need, they'll just keep reproducing, and it can happen really, really fast. It can happen really, really fast. We just have to give nature what she needs and stop and get our foot off her throat, basically. Support her, care for her, serve her. Don't try to control her and dominate her. It's not hard.
So let's use the system to turn the system around. How are we doing this?
So this is the sort of the thing we've gotten fairly well known for, is this handheld ray gun strategy. Basically, the concept is that there's dramatic nutrient variation in food, and there's a science called spectroscopy, which is how we know what stars in the universe are made up of, which basically says everything in chemistry is a vibration in physics. So every copper vibrates at a certain frequency, and zinc vibrates at a certain frequency, and protein vibrates at a certain frequency. And so frequency is light, basically. So a spectrometer is something you can take a picture of the carrot, and it'll basically tell you what the carrot's made up of, how much copper, how much polyphenols, etc. And so that's a lot of the research and work we've been doing for the last number of years, is to document the scale of nutrient variation in food, and to show that we can build a handheld, consumer-priced, flash of light ray gun to test nutrient levels at point of purchase, non-invasively. So the end game looks like an app on your phone where you go into the grocery store or the farmer's market and you flash light at the carrot, and it reads the nutrient levels in the carrot and it spits out on your phone 20 out of 100, 40 out of 100, 80 out of 100. And if you got 3 bags of carrots to choose from, you can choose the one that's most nutritious. Well, at least you have the data point to add into all the rest of the things you know. Whether it's beef or milk or wheat or rice or carrots or blueberries or apples, there is a continuum of nutrient levels in food. And our thought is and that connects directly to flavor and aroma, right? And the likelihood of your kids to eat the carrots. Like if your kids don't like carrots, it's because they're animals and the carrots you're giving them are bad quality. Doesn't matter if they're organic, doesn't matter if they're local. If they don't taste good, they're not that good. Like our tongues and noses are really sophisticated nutrient monitoring systems. So if you've got a spectrometer that you can flash a light at something and it'll tell you it's going to taste good or not, which means is it more or less nutritious? Our thought is if you can do that and you can go to the store and you can flash lights at them all and you can say which ones are better, and you can take those yourself, and maybe you can post that on social and say, this week, this brand of carrots is better, this brand is bad, so everybody in town knows. Then our thought is the good ones will leave the shelf and the bad ones will stay on the shelf. And it's that simple, because companies are all about making money, and if certain things people stop buying, then they're going to go to their farmers and say, hey, we don't want those anymore. And the farmers will say, oh, okay, well, what we have to do to grow them the ones you want, and then they'll learn how to work well with nature, and then they'll have a better one than the other company. And so it's a competition to the top, basically. We use economic incentive, enlightened self-interest. The people who buy food can choose a thing that's better for themselves and their families, and that inspires the supply chain to focus on nutrition instead of volume, which facilitates building soil health, which facilitates reversing climate change, which facilitates reversing chronic disease. And yeah, we can, through just taking better care of our families with the money we already spend on food, have massive impact of positive nature on the world. So
I love it. It's so elegant. It's a funny old world, isn't it? Where, I guess we used to eat things because the aroma drew us, or we could, we would touch it and it would feel right, or the tree was so laden that it just had to be time. Now we just are that much more disconnected, where we need a machine to retrain us in what is delicious. But I guess if it comes back around, then we might be able to delete the spectrometer app from our phone eventually.
Hopefully we get to a point where we actually each are living on our own land, living a simple life, not being wage slaves, like how about we're animals and belong in nature, and culture and community are what causes us to be happy and fulfilled. And I don't know, like we are citizens of a country, and so we, part of our birthright is tenure to land. How about we envision not having to live in cities and things like that in the first place if we don't want to? 100%.
You might as well ask the big questions.
Yeah. How about let's aim for what we want instead of running away from what we don't want and complaining about it. Let's focus our minds on creating the world that we want to see. Why not?
Well, I reckon in the few minutes we've got left, that brings us around to the spiritual, which you mentioned right at the beginning. Tell us how that feeds into our food systems and how we might set up our lives.
Yeah, well, I think to my mind, I think in Western science these days, they've gotten around to realizing that most of reality is not on the physical plane, that there's a whole bunch of something that's happening on other levels, and there's other cultures that have talked about this, but everybody knows what an emotion is, or what an idea is, or what a deep feeling is. Those are realities that live on other levels. And, the physicists talk about dark matter and dark energy because they can't find it. But if you go to India and study the Vedas, and, there's these levels of being effectively that are all we're carrying around this body that we think is a physical body, but there's other aspects of our body also. There's an energy body, an emotional body. And so for me, the idea is basically like in music, if you've got an elementary school band concert, the kids are really cute, but it's dissonant. It's not vibrational. It's not harmonic. It's not a pleasant experience. It's a bad vibe. I mean, it's out of tune. Versus a beautiful a cappella choir, which is singing perfectly in tune. And if that's happening, there's this thing called an overtone, which is like a higher note that becomes manifest. And so my thought is that as we eat junk and become incoherent, it becomes difficult for us to tune into our higher natures, for us to ground our higher levels of being. And so I think culture broadly is incoherent because we are broadly incoherent, because what we've been building our bodies out of for the last few generations is incoherent, insufficient. And so the idea is basically, if we can increase the quality and the food supply, if the food we have available to us is more nutritious and we are what we eat, by simply eating better food, we become more coherent beings, which means it's natural for us to ground our higher natures more often. And so we're able to tune into our higher nature as our physical form becomes coherent, and that has to do with, to a large degree, what we put into it. So I'm not sure if that makes sense or not, but that's the broader strategy. Don't fight the political system, don't fight the economic system, don't fight the medical system or the media system or the agricultural system or the whatever. Focus on the solution of food being more nutritious, which actually systematically creates a dynamic where all these things can become more well.
Yeah, well, I reckon at least some of my planes are traveling with you in all of that. As you were speaking, I just kept having this vision of a salad I made recently, which was with really beautiful, plump cherry tomatoes, some radishes that I sliced into all different shapes, and then some really jammy figs that I tore and just like strew it all over this very shallow bowl that I made the salad in. And it was really lovely produce from a place called Torello Farm, who sources from local farmers. And I don't know, I didn't need a spectrometer for this one, but it does excite me to think, how much more could it be? Like, how much more amplified could the joy be? And it's certainly, a question worth asking, and a journey that I'm really curious about. And just even in my own very, very tiny garden, I will think about all the beings that I'm nurturing alongside my little chilies and radishes.
Yeah, and to the point of a beautiful, delicious salad, who are you eating it with and how, right? It's not just the food; it's the act of eating the food, and the you aren't just eating the physical substance; you're eating the emotional substance, and like it's the whole way of living life. I think has to do with our whole way of being, and it's not just the physical thing, right? It's the whole, everything around it.
Absolutely. I was eating with very, very fond friends, and a really nice table with really nicely set with good, nice plates and napkins. And it was very beautiful. So I totally hear that. So Dan, we'll put the link to your website in the show notes and draw people's attention to your series of classes you're doing in Australia in April, and then back again later in the year for the spring sesh. I'm really excited to, I guess, connect with people who are inspired by you and hopefully to experience what they grow. Really grateful to you for sharing with us today. Thanks for all the work you're doing. It's, I love thinking about this stuff, and you've really blown my mind in a good way.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for having me, and maybe we'll get to meet in person. Yeah,
well, I would love that. I know in the middle of April you're at Farm My School, which is not too far from me in Melbourne, down with James McLennan near Geelong. So, I'll put that one in the diary.
Beautiful. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dan. This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about. hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This is a Deep in the Weeds production.